So welcome everybody to the Jump Smash podcast. I think it's our third podcast. It's our third edition. I'm Bobby Griffin, and I'm joined by my good friend once again, Jan-Niklas Pott, from all the way from Germany. Jan, how you doing? How's things?
I'm doing pretty well. Actually started playing badminton again this week, so things are starting to look upwards.
Oh wow, that's great. We're not quite there yet over here in the UK. At least the Team GB para badminton guys are not quite there yet. So you're you had a group session this morning or something?
Yeah, we're only allowed to do like individual sessions, so it's only me and my coach basically, and we are allowed to some special permit for like the Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls in Germany. They are allowed to start training again once a day in very small groups.
Mm-hmm.
Which
That's
is nice.
good.
Yeah.
I bet it's great to be back on court.
It feels amazing, man. It feels great.
There's talk of there was talk of us having the same opportunity soon. Actually, I think that was the plan, to start letting the Olympic and Paralympic UK programs come back into the venue where we train each day, the English Institute of Sport. So hopefully that won't be too long, because to be fair, I think the guys are all enjoying it. I'm taking a back seat really, but the rest of the team are all training really hard still. Physically anyway, out on the bike a lot, doing a lot of strength and conditioning, and lots of footwork, routines in the garden, that kind of stuff. But that was never really your favourite way to train, right? Was it?
No, I'm not really the footwork in the garden type of guy. I'm the let's play some box doubles or something.
You and me both. That was always the same. It still is today. It's a running theme. It's a running joke. It's a running joke where we train. That's the first thing I want to do. The only thing I want to do is playing in the Danish box and hit some doubles. It's great. Yeah. But hey, at least we can get stuff done. I'm still working hard around the house. It's looking good here, so I'm at least pleased with that. But I'm getting fat. I'm eating too much, drinking too much. But hey, I don't have a Paralympics to look forward to like you. So
yeah, but maybe there's a European Championships.
Oh yeah. We had a plan for that, which you would have been excited by. But I think moving the Paralympics back a year and the Olympics back a year might have just changed that plan slightly. Obviously, the Europeans was going to be after the Paralympics, right? So I don't know what's happening now. So it's a bit of a shame. But there might have been a return to the doubles court for myself and Dan, which might have been fun. Try and get Pascal out of retirement, and we could have had a good game.
True.
Hey mate, let's talk some badminton. This is going to be a really exciting episode, I hope, and I'm very excited because we have got Toby Penty, the UK, the British, the English number one in men's singles, joining us in a second. It's going to be good to have a professional player on the live chat on the podcast. In fact, it was your idea, Jan, a few weeks back. I think we were talking about the state of my hairline and comparing me to any other guys in the game with the same look. So yeah. So I don't know. Let's we're a couple of minutes early, but do you think we should let's see if he's available? Should we try and get him online?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Hello?
Toby, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello, mate. Listen, it's Griff here. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the chat. I'm hoping you've got a few minutes to talk.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks. It's good to speak to you guys.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Well, I'm not sure. I know we've met at least in passing and unofficially in bits and pieces, but you've probably never met my buddy Jan-Niklas from Germany.
No, I don't think I have. No. So it's nice to meet you in this. It's the sort of way everyone's meeting at the moment, I guess, is through this distance. So.
Well, Jan's on the line with us now as well. Jan plays in the same para badminton class category as I do, SL4, which probably means nothing to you, Toby. But Jan's been a good friend and a good competitor of mine over the years, and it was his idea actually to get you on as a guest. It started off as a joke because you and I go to the same barbers, Toby. I think that's and he said my competition in the best looking bald badminton player is Toby Penty. We should come on. So yeah, Jan, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, we'll kick things off, Toby. I don't know how long you've got, mate, but we've got a few things to talk about. Certainly, all things all round, and this lockdown sort of state of affairs right now. How's life, mate? How are you coping with being stuck at home, training, that kind of stuff?
No, it's been okay, to be fair. I've had a few people kind of ask me similar in terms of from a training aspect and stuff, and it's I've got to be honest, it's probably the longest I've been without a racket in my hand since I probably started playing all those years ago. So it's definitely different, but I'm just doing what I can with it. I've got a good setup back home in terms of training I can get on with and keeping myself busy. So compared to what it could be, I think I'm okay with everything that's going on right now.
That's really cool. Jan and I were just chatting before we called you. Actually, he's back on court with his para badminton team over in Germany. We were just chatting about how Jan's been doing a one-to-one this morning with his coach, and I said that we're not quite there yet in the UK. Certainly para badminton. I wasn't sure if you guys were able to get on court at all, but yeah, Jan. We were just saying it must feel great, right, to be back on court with a racket in your hand.
It definitely feels amazing. I was a little bit rusty after such a long time off, but it feels good to be back. Hopefully, sometime this year we can play another tournament.
Yeah, let's hope so. Toby, what was your plans for tournaments? Were you obviously Lowe's has been cancelled, but is there any sort of inclination at the moment as to what the next sort of route back might be, or how long that might take?
You know what? I'm really in the dark on it as much as everyone else is. To be fair, I mean, I'd be happy if looking at it. For the full picture, I'd be happy to see any badminton back this year. I think would be great. I think when these things happen, you probably like politicians do and stuff like that. You've almost got to look at what the worst outcome would be, and I think the worst outcome is that we probably don't start playing again until next year. So fingers crossed there is some sort of badminton being played, any sport in general being played. This year, and especially with a crowd, because I know there's a lot of talk about doing things behind closed doors, but for all of us, we don't really, the sport isn't the same without a crowd there. So that's also the other big thing, is that we as athletes, part of what makes it so great playing at the top level is playing in front of people. So yeah, no idea yet, but yeah, I've got my fingers crossed as much as everyone else, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't see a great deal of sport play without the crowds, behind closed doors. There were a few football matches on TV those 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and it just looked really weird. Like I didn't like watching it. It just felt odd, and I'd hate to see badminton being played in the same.
Yeah, well, I saw but it looks like the Bundesliga. They're saying I think the 9th of May is when they're looking in Germany to start the football again. Yeah, so
that's true.
Yeah, so I think any sign of sport coming back is obviously a good thing, because that starts the ball rolling. But you've just got to be so careful with everything that's going on at the moment. You can't, it only takes a couple of wrong steps and we're kind of back to square one, I guess.
Yeah, that would be a real shame if we ruined it by going back too early. So I guess we have to stay safe and have to keep the priorities in mind.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's good for Jan to be back at training, and there was talk for us for the team GB, the para badminton guys, to go back to the EIS where we train, just sort of elite sports, those that are looking towards the Olympics, etc., to go back in small groups and train, but that was shut down real quickly. I don't know if that might be the first step for us, in England. to have the same thing. But like you, Toby, that's we've heard nothing. Could be a good one.
I've heard very little bits about trying to potentially, the National Centre in Milton Keynes, when they can start to reopen. And I think over here in England, until there is, any sign of the main lockdown being changed, I can't see that being possible. So it's just a case of playing it by ear, doing what we can. It's great that like Jan in Germany and also some of the Danes, they've started going back in really small groups training. So, it shows that there's light at the end of the tunnel in that respect in terms of just getting on court. So that's a good thing. But until then, it's just a case of, it's one of those things, just stay fit, stay healthy, and then hopefully it will come quicker than we think.
Yeah, for sure. How is the fitness? Obviously, I follow you on Instagram and see some of the stuff going out on emails from Badminton England. You're part of the, the guys leading that. How are you able to measure the fitness? Do you know if it's affecting you at this stage, or are you still, on it when it comes to bike and footwork and things like that?
Yeah, so I bought myself a watt bike, like one of the high-end bikes that I'm sure that they must have at the IS, and they've got a couple at Milton Keynes, some of the top range sort of bikes, and that's helped in terms of being able to keep on top of what my numbers are and progress. Running once a week, like I feel like I'm running well. It's interesting. It's given me more of a chance to work more kind of maybe a little bit more endurance based. I'm still doing some short sessions, but me personally, I've been working a lot more on that endurance stuff, even with my shadow sessions, much kind of longer, sort of 45, 50 minutes, where they're not necessarily that explosive because, you're doing it outside on the pavement and stuff. And the first thing is I'm trying not to fall over and stuff like that. So it's trying to work in a different way and different things that necessarily you don't always work on when you're on court every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's opened up a few opportunities. I mean, for me, doing other things as well, just to try something new. And I mean, my girlfriend's son, I was kicking the football around with him most weeks, but you go out and play on the grass that you're not used to. We're used to flat surfaces. We're used to sort of, moving around on a perfect court or in the gym. I used to play football as a kid, and I haven't done it for years. But as soon as you bring in something uneven, I realise how bad I am at on an uneven surface. I don't know if it gets pretty dangerous, Toby. You've got to look after yourself.
Yeah, well, it's got because where I am, we've got like a driveway, and obviously you've got the concrete, but I've got like a little bit of that sort of little bit of gravel on the top. So if I lunge like with a bit too much intent, then my feet can easily just give way. And I've had 4 or 5 moments. If that had been caught on camera, it would have definitely been like a best bloopers sort of thing, because I was so close to ending up on my bum a couple of times. But no, it's like you said, it's nice to have an opportunity to do different things. It's nice for me, I've been playing badminton for a long time, so as much as people say you must be disappointed that you can't play, of course I am, but for me, I can only speak personally, it's been nice to take actually a little bit of a step back, really, as well.
I must admit, there's parts of this I'm actually enjoying too. There's spending time, during times of day where you're not usually around with, friends, or not friends necessarily going out to meet them, but with, family, and spending some quality time, in touch with family and things. It's quite nice.
It's actually really interesting because badminton actually doesn't really have an off season. It's a whole year round thing. It's like the first time in years people will have that much time off.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you make in terms of the way badminton's going now. It's followed tennis in a way that you're right. There isn't necessarily. I can't pinpoint in the calendar where there's an off season anymore. When maybe going back 5-10 years when I was just breaking into the seniors, it definitely seemed like there were a few months maybe in the summer and stuff where there really weren't that many tournaments, but that really isn't the case anymore. It's a different animal these days, and you have to be on top of it almost all year.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, Toby, actually, this is the longest period you can remember for a long time that you haven't had a racket in your hand. It's the same thing for me, and it has been for Jan, of course, as well. And the last time I spent so long without a racket in my hand was probably during my accident. I was sort of mid-late 20s when I had my accident and became disabled, a para badminton player afterwards. I lost my leg and I spent quite a lot of time out without actually wanting to play badminton. I wanted to sort of move that onto a sensitive subject, Toby. I hope you're okay to talk about it. It's probably an obvious one, and you probably get asked about it a lot, actually. I was an active guy, played a bit of badminton among other things, lost my leg, came back and got into para badminton. You lost your hair and okay, you didn't go through necessarily anything that changes your game physically, but certainly mentally, you must have had to overcome quite a lot. Did you spend quite a lot of time out of the sport when all of that was going on?
You know what? I didn't, and that a lot of that was based around kind of the timing of when it happened. Really, I hadn't spoken to a lot of people about it at the time when it was happening, and it was also around that time when I think it was the Swiss Open 2019. So that would have been March, the week after the All England last year.
Okay.
And I was out there with Raj Usef at the time, and he told me before. I think he told a few people then that he was retiring, and I mean the timing of that as well, going so close to the Olympics, that opened a door for me that I couldn't really turn down, even with all the stuff I was, the issues I was having with the alopecia and stuff. It kind of meant that if I did take some time off court and a much longer period of time, then this opportunity could potentially pass me by, and opportunities like this don't necessarily come around all the time. So it was quite tricky in that respect, in that I would have liked to have taken a bit more time away from the court, but at the same time, I had this huge opportunity thrown upon me that I really couldn't turn down with Olympic qualifying coming up. So it wasn't much time off court at all, really. So that was a very difficult side to it, I think.
I was going to say, I suppose that must have had some positives in that it was a huge distraction and a really good aim for you to sort of focus on the badminton and that that Olympic spot, especially as Raj was retiring, etc. But at the same time, it must have felt quite a lot of pressure when you might have wanted a bit of time to sit back and reflect and deal with it, I suppose. That's really impressive, and I hope, Toby, it is okay to talk about it. I mean, obviously,
no, it's fine. It's fine. I've spoken to I've wrote some things on Instagram and social media and stuff, and I've spoken to numerous people about it now. So really, it's like I said to other people I've spoken to about. It's a good thing for me, and also for hopefully people listening. That it shows you can talk openly about these things, and it helps more than it hinders.
Well, I think it's a really positive message, and thanks for the opportunity to voice it. Part of the reasons Jan and I are doing this, I mean, we're not well-known people. We play badminton, para badminton, and yes, we are known in that community, but it's a very small community, whereas you're a professional player, so you've got a lot of fans and you've got a lot of people that you can inspire. And part of the reason I felt confident to talk about it was the fact that on your social media and what have you, you seem so positive now about it, and obviously you've overcome it and you're pushing forwards with life. There was one little quote or a phrase that you've used a couple of times in that you're chasing your best self, not your old self. And I was fascinated by it, because when I had my accident, I was the opposite. I obviously lost a leg, lost a limb, and needed to get my life back. And there were lots of people asking me to, perhaps go different ways. I could have retired. I could have quit my job. I could have tried new sports that, now I've got one leg I can get into. But actually, my whole view on things was that I wanted my life back because I was happy with it. And actually, you've taken that a sort of step further in that you're using this and saying, hey, it doesn't affect me in the slightest. I'm still looking to be the best person I can be, not just I want to be the person I was, and let it affect you negatively. And I was so impressed by that. I think that was great.
It was more a case of, and this was something I realised not just with the alopecia, but for me as a person and a badminton player, like, it was very easy for me just to look back at when I felt my best and to always picture what that was and try and think that that's how I want to feel now, instead of feeling like, right, that's great to look back on that and realise the things I've done or the great times I've had in the past, but there are going to be more of those, and I can make more of those happen instead of trying to replicate before how I felt. Like, everything all those things that had happened before were still going to be with me, but it was time to move on and create new things and think about being in the moment and also the future and how much better it could be, instead of trying to think too much about the things in the past. And that's the same sometimes as I've been with my badminton, in terms of thinking about, I remember when I played, even little things like, when I was playing well, I played a shot like this, so I need to play it like this, instead of getting away from that and thinking more about how I can improve my game from where I am right now going forward, in terms of instead of looking backwards.
That's mate, I'm so, it kind of inspires me, and I wish I would have got my head around my situation sooner. It took me a few years to get to that perspective. I'm actually happy with the person I am now. I don't look back and wish I was like that. In fact, I'm glad it happened, and I'd rather have been through it and be the person I am now than go back and have, that life back. So, but that took me some time, and I'm so sort of impressed with how quickly you seem to have, just got on with that. And, yeah.
But, I mean, of course, for you, what I was dealing with was just mental. I mean, yours was obviously a physical issue, and of course, it's going to cause things mentally, things you're thinking about as well. So, I think the main point I'd always make is whether it takes a short amount of time or a long amount of time, as long as you get to that place, then it's not about necessarily how long it takes, as long as you can get there, and the process is that you get to that place where you feel, more comfortable and you're happy with how things are. That's the main thing,
I couldn't agree more nowadays. Jan, how do you feel about that? Because Jan's born with a disability that affected your leg, right, Jan? I forget what it's called.
Exactly. It's tibia hyperplasie. It's like the medical term, I guess, but it's just that my right leg isn't as developed as my left one. I don't have some bones on my body. It doesn't grow as much as my other leg. So, yeah, but I don't think in any point of my life, if someone offered me a working leg, I would have taken it. It's just made me the person I am. It's who I am. It's who I always was. Mm-hmm. It never affected me in any way, to be honest. I don't know. It's kind of easy for me because my mother has the same issue as that I have. So I think that made it easier.
Yeah, I remember now. It's hereditary, right?
Yeah.
And I think, that it's great that you had someone there straight from the start who could understand it. And I think, I don't know how it was for you, Bobby, but for me, in terms of, for a while, I shut away the whole word alopecia and meeting with or speaking with anyone who had it. Whereas, the last few months, I would say actually something that was put together with the help of Badminton England. I spoke to Joanna Rousel, who was she's won 2 Olympic gold medals track cycling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she suffered with the same condition, and even just speaking to her, like it helped me massively to, and that wasn't even that long ago, but it helped me massively to help understand it a bit more, especially someone who was an elite athlete as well. It gave me so much more perspective about things, and sharing it with someone who was going through, who had been or is going through something similar, it definitely helps.
That's quite amazing. I think it's great, and I agree with you nowadays. Absolutely, I'm behind it. In fact, I remember thinking I want my old life back, to the point where I would then try and hide, the disability. I wanted my career. I wanted to be seen as the same person in a pair of trousers, and I luckily could get away with it. Whereas nowadays, I don't show off. I don't walk around trying to show it off or anything, but I am more than happy to let the world see this is who I am. And because it's open and honest, people are a lot more approachable and easy to get along with. And yeah, it's just, it's more satisfying. It's a more sort of a happier state of mind, I think. So, and it's great to see that you've handled that in the same way, Toby. I think it's impressive, really impressive.
Yeah, and like you just said there at the end is, and this was something Joe spoke to me at the time, was, you know, the confidence you purvey, you show to others is the confidence they show back towards you. It's almost like if you show your confidence, it's like a mirror effect almost. If you come across, you know, unsure and you know, unconfident about it, or, you know, having issues with it, then you also, you know, the environment you're in can also start to feel uncomfortable. Whereas if you feel you can come across more confident, it definitely helps those people you're interacting with feel more comfortable as well.
Yeah, totally agree. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, I love that. Really love that. Toby, you mentioned Raj Youssef. Obviously, he was the British, you know, number one for a long time, and I think it's fair to say that for a few years you were sort of playing understudy to him, as, you know, the person that was going to jump into his shoes. How was that relationship? Because as far as I can see and tell, everything was, you know, you guys got along like a house on fire, even though you were almost competing for that spot.
Yeah, we instantly seemed to hit it off quite well. He's definitely, you know, I was usher at his wedding and stuff and things like that. So we are very close. So it was difficult to be competitive sometimes when you have that sort of friendship. But I think the good thing was that, I mean, we didn't really, because I was kind of always a level just behind him, we weren't really competing against each other that much.
Okay.
And I always found it, as much as there is competition amongst, you know, whether that be the English players or whether that be the German players, you know, in your own country, once you get to a certain level, you realise there are so many more players out there that you've got to try and compete against. And if you don't help each other, it's only going to make it harder. And that was, I think, the longer it went on, us training together. I mean, of course, he already had that relationship with you know, basically his best mate, who was Carl Baxter before I was at the centre. So
yes,
he's had those relationships which have probably helped him, you know, in terms of still having the motivation to train, because, you know, I can be honest enough that none of the guys he trained with were at the same level he was.
Right.
So he needed another way to, you know, get the best out of us, and that certainly worked, I would say, and vice versa. So yeah, it was difficult at times, but I think on the whole it was really great to be able to go into training and be training with people that I was really close with.
I remember watching the Worlds last year, and I think Raj had finished his match, and he kind of came off and sat behind your court to help sort of coach you through the rest of yours.
Yeah, and that I mean, I said at the time, I just said that kind of shows the person he is, that, you know, he's been playing badminton for so long, and that was really his moment, you know, having just retired and stuff. And at the same time, he came and sat next to Nathan Robertson on the chair when I was, you know, in a match. I kind of, in terms of Olympic qualifying, if even just winning that first round match was going to be a nice win to get, and also a chance to play a high ranked player next. So yeah, actions do speak louder than words at times, and that was definitely something that showed it, I think. Yeah,
superb, absolutely. What are your sort of aspirations, Toby, now? I mean, obviously, you know, I'd say at the moment, right now, I mean, you're just about top 50, somewhere around.
Yeah, I'm around the 50 mark, yeah.
And I think you've been a few places higher, towards 40, yeah. But you know, you're peaking now at, what are you, age 27?
27, yeah.
7. This has got to be a real kick in the teeth with the coronavirus putting everything on hold, because this, you know, was to be possibly your best year yet, I would have argued. Where do you hope to go from here? Obviously, the Olympics is being pushed back, so that's great. Hopefully you'll be in that next year, but aims for the future?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because, you know, I kind of feel some of these best years, you know, it's been difficult to get the most out of them with, you know, the stuff we've talked about that's been going on. So I feel like I still have time to go and do a lot more. And you know, for me, the advantage of the Olympics being pushed back is there is more time to develop my game and kind of focus more on that now that I feel like the short-term alopecia issue is kind of behind me a little bit more. I can get back to focusing on my badminton and my development, which is definitely the main thing I want to get back to focusing on a bit more over the next period going up towards the Olympics. After that, really, I'd love to get into that sort of top 32 bracket and be consistently playing on those top world tour level events. I mean, the year I would have qualified to go to the All England when they still had qualifying was the year they then decided to stop qualifying and just make it a 32 draw. So that's still a major goal, to get into those tournaments where I've earned getting into them because of being in the top 32 in the world. That's that in terms of a sort of shortish and long-term goal. That's the main one next, I would say.
It's interesting, actually. Do you think the change to have no more qualification at the highest tournaments made it a little bit unfair or a little bit too hard to enter these tournaments? Because if you're at these events, me personally, I didn't see a problem with no qualifying in the Super 1000 events. So All England, Indonesia, and China Opens. I understand that because it makes them special. But I think for the 750 tournaments as well, not to have qualifying, it does make it an unfair on the ones just outside that top 32, because you know the ones inside are getting good points, even if they lose consistently on a first round basis.
There's been plenty over the years.
Whereas you could play qualifying in these events at the 500 level, lose first round of a 500 event in qualifying and get basically no points, even though you're playing very, very good players from qualifying. So it kind of rewards you once you get there. Me personally, I'd like to see qualifying at the 750 events. Moving forward. I have no issue with the 1000 tournaments not having qualifying. But yeah, the 750 tournaments, I think that would be a good change to make, especially in the singles categories.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
And I think as well is have it playing the 500 tournaments with the qualifying is I find it crazy that the qualifying day you're playing guys who are also ranked within the top 50, and at times you're playing. If you won your first qualifying match, you'd be playing your next qualifying match 2 hours later, 3 hours later. I have more time in between matches at an international series event, which to me, when the level is getting higher and higher, the professionalism of how they're run should be at the top-notch level, and should be giving every athlete a fair chance, whether they're seeded 1 or they're the last person to get into the tournament.
Yeah. I feel like the system is kind of flawed in that way, because most of the top players are still playing in those 500 tour events, and I think there should be they shouldn't be playing that many tournaments. The top players, they should only be playing in those top tournaments, and then you have a way, if you do well in 500 tournaments, to go up a level. But the way it is right now, you have basically no chance, because there's still Kento Momota running around in a World Tour 500 event. Yeah,
and then when you add in a year like Olympic qualifying, it just becomes even crazier, because players, you've then got the players who are ranked top 5 in the world, top 3 in the world, going down to 300 tournaments. You've got players top 10 in the world going down to the 100 level tournaments. It doesn't really make sense from what necessarily BWF were trying to set up. I think that the premise of it is there, but in terms of structuring it, that it's fair for everyone, and like you said, the top players then aren't having to kill themselves playing all these tournaments. To me, it just needs some tweaking to make it work a little bit better.
Yeah, it would make absolute sense to revise that. When you talk about players from 32 to say 80 in the world, and those that are battling to get in, right now it is so hard to just make that breakthrough. I remember a few years back looking at it. I was doing some commentary, and you could see certain players. I don't want to mention their names, but they'd lose every time in what was the Premier Gold or whatever you called it back then. Yeah. Events. They wouldn't get past first round, but just by being in that first round would earn them enough ranking points to sustain those tournament levels. And that's similar to what we're talking about here. It just doesn't make it fair for somebody that actually top 50 in the world, you can tell are a better player, but don't get the chance to play because this face, this name is constantly in the draw, and you can't sort of, once you're there, you sort of don't fall out of it, which is great for them, but not for everybody else.
No, and it's just it's finding that way that works, because sometimes it is, 8 people might pull out of a tournament, but it shouldn't be that that's happening because players are entering tournaments and then thinking, oh, I am or I'm not going to play, just based on what's happening in other tournaments. If you're injured, then fine, but it almost becomes ludicrous. Like in an Olympic year, everyone just enters everything.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a bit mad, really.
Yeah, especially if a top player's coming back from a small injury or whatever, has been out for a while, and then they're dropping down to play 300s and stuff just to get a few extra ranking points. Yeah. And it makes it so tough for people that are there to hopefully get a medal in that event and get enough ranking points. Suddenly you're up against a top 5 player in the world, and you're in the second round. It's just there's some work that needs to be done. Yeah, absolutely. Toby, we wanted to put you on the spot with a couple of things, if that's all right. Jan, this is Jan's question, really. In fact, no, Jan, you ask it. You were talking to me the other day, Jan, about British singles versus doubles, and I wanted, let's put Jan on the chopping block for a second.
I was just in the history of British badminton, the doubles disciplines have always been a little bit stronger than the singles, I would say.
Yeah.
What's causing that, would you say?
I think first of all is the history in terms of if you look back, it's always been doubles, so there's that history behind it, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but especially over here, doubles is seen just as big as singles, especially in sort of a social environment. If you go to a leisure centre, I'd say, or you see recreational players playing, they're playing a lot more doubles. I see very little singles going on at that level. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is an easier way, not an easier way, but a quicker way maybe towards success. There's no doubt that nowadays the singles categories are so competitive from the junior ages all the way up that there's no quick, except for a few players, there's no quick chance of making it up the world rankings quickly than maybe there is in doubles. The medal success as well in Britain for doubles and mixed is there compared to singles, where people believe they can do it because it's been done so many times before. In the singles category in the last kind of 20-30 years, there's only really 2 who have been towards the top level, really top level, I would say, and that's probably Raj and Darren Hall. So there's not necessarily a pathway where you can see it, whereas I think for these doubles players who are coming through, they can see it. They've got, just still playing now, you've got the Chris Langridges, Chris Adcocks, Gabby Adcock. In recent history, you've got Nathan Robertson, Gail Ems, Donna Kellogg, Anthony Clark. The list goes backwards and is a lot bigger. So I think because of that, you see a lot more players in the doubles categories. And you see, I'd say, more coaches who come from a doubles background in England as well, especially at the elite level.
Yeah. I think that grassroots thing is massively important as well. You get exposed to it. I came through from a low level. Leisure centres to joining a club that played twice a week to playing club matches. Nobody played singles, not at all. And so coaches come through that as well, and everything just seems to be based around playing doubles, unless you are at the very top level, playing in your, regional performance centres when you're 12 years old, and then moving on through the England setup. You don't really play elite level singles, whereas you get coached doubles as a club player, at 14 years old in your local club, whereas nobody would know how to coach singles for that same person in your club, not technically anyway.
And it's actually something I haven't thought about that much before, but I having said it now, I definitely think it's true in that when you look around, like you said, the club you came from was always doubles. You don't see many clubs doing singles sessions, even if it's match play. It's always doubles because it's more social. It requires a little less stress on the body. The rallies are a little bit longer sometimes, especially at the lower level of doubles. So I think that actually plays quite a big part, and it needs a bigger all-round push, not just at the elite level, but all the levels filtering down for singles then to become bigger and also to get better results within the UK.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it feels like when you have good players, it's easier to pull like the younger players up to their level. I think that's also a big factor in this. Like you can have like Anthony Clark pulling up the next generation of players, and now Alice and Language, they can pull up the next generation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you see players who are either still playing or have just finished, and they've got Olympic and world medals, it instantly helps people subconsciously probably believe a lot more that they can go on and achieve those sort of things. It's harder in countries, say for example at the moment France, you've got a lot of really good players coming through, and someone like Brice Leverdes has done really well competing up against those top guys, but he hasn't necessarily maybe broken into that top 10 level where someone else can go, okay, I can see how I can do that now. So it takes someone to kind of smash through that door to then open that opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was at the World Juniors in Russia last year, and to see Popov make it through to a final, first European in singles for years, that's the sort of thing that he would have been inspired by his older brother, who was inspired by people like Brice, and so on and so on. And I think you're absolutely right, Toby. No pressure then for you, mate, as somebody to lead the next sort of 5-10 years of top singles.
But we, there is a big gap sort of age-wise towards me and the next guys playing singles now. But sometimes it does take not as many players coming through for there then to be another push, and there be a lot more players coming through. So hopefully, down the line we are going to get some more singles players coming through, because I think it's important that we're not just competing in those doubles events, that we are competing all round. It's I think it's great if we could also get that team sort of level going, where we can go to Sudirman and Thomas Cups and be not just every now and then potentially get through our group, but feel like actually we can make a quarterfinals, or we can maybe look towards wanting to achieve a medal at one of these big tournaments.
Mm. Yes, yeah, I totally agree. If we could put in performances like you mentioned, Sudirman Cup there, your performance against Victor, was it last year or the year before? It was last year, wasn't it?
Last year, yeah.
You took the second? No, you took the first?
Yeah, second set, yeah. Second set.
The third was, I mean, for me, that's the best performance I've ever seen you put in. I don't know if you disagree, and I mean, obviously, in a tournament, in a match, that means so much. Have you ever played better?
Probably for the moment, at the situation at the time, probably not. It was actually straight. It's funny talking about that, because that tournament was the first tournament I played after kind of cutting all my hair off and it being quite evident but I was dealing with the alopecia and stuff. And the day before, I played Ginting from Indonesia, and I literally got stage fright. Basically, playing, I couldn't move. And the one person you need to be moving against when you're playing is Anthony Ginting. So I remember the night before, I had a really good chat with the coach who was there, Dave Lindley. And we basically had a kind of 40-minute heart-to-heart. Basically, it was a little bit of badminton, but and tactics for the match the next day, but not a great deal. And you know, he helped get me in the right mindset. And you're probably right. It is the best match I've played, purely because I lost the first set fairly comfortably, but I just remember even after losing that first set thinking, I'm playing okay here. If I keep with this and keep the belief in what I'm doing, this could change. If he has a little bad patch and I keep building myself like I'm feeling I'm doing and keep the snowball effect kind of going, I can build momentum, and that's kind of what happened. I just lost my way a little bit at the end of the third set, unfortunately. But yeah, I was really happy with how I played in that match. And talking about that whole team match in general, it was an unbelievable effort from everyone. You know, I'd never been on a team that had beaten Denmark before, and they had a strong team. So at that point, that was something very special.
I love it when those kind of moments happen and you can see it's not necessarily physically how they've got the beating of somebody, but how mentally you're so up for it. I mean, I watched that match against Victor not too long ago when we discussed you coming on and having a chat with us, actually, and how you and Dave Lindy were chatting about, look, you know, Victor's looking for the lift off the net, take him on at the net, just play him back at the net and take him on. And it was such a positive attitude that you had that went through and won that. Vittinghuis you mentioned Denmark. Vittinghuis did the same thing in the Thomas Cup a few years back, and for me, won Denmark the Thomas Cup that year in his performance in singles. And I think that again, it's a mental attitude. It wasn't necessarily that he was physically better than the people he played against, but on that day he was better mentally, and it's absolutely incredible.
We also and that Danish team that won the Thomas Cup, you could see they had a real togetherness and stuff, and every member of that team really, they played their part towards getting that title. And it was the same at that Sudirman Cup. We were such a small team. Like, I remember being where you are behind the court, there's kind of separated into two bits where obviously you have the English team, and then on both days it was the Danish team and the Indonesian team. And the amount of players and staff they had compared to us was just ridiculous. And we were a tiny team, but we were really, together for that team event, I thought, and it showed. The basic things like that, I always talk, I don't know loads about doubles, but when I've spoken to younger doubles players, I've said, if you're in a partnership, as much as technical and tactical things, if you're a team and you work together as a team constantly, then it's going to put you in such a better place. And that, I guess that's the same for team events as well. That whole teamwork thing it's not necessarily a badminton thing, but it can it can take you such a long way.
I think I couldn't agree more. I mean, we see it in training all the time here, and as certainly I prefer doubles, and I'm better at doubles than singles, and Jan's the same. And we couldn't agree with that anymore. I used to play with Daniel Bethel, who's one of our English hopefuls in singles, half-court singles for the Paralympics. And he and I, when we're on the same page and playing together, we don't have to play our best, but if we're together, it works. And when we fall apart, it's so bad. And I think that's exactly what it is with teamwork. Toby and Jan, I don't know if I'm okay to do this, but talking about teams and talking about the Thomas Cup, it leads us on to something, a little game that Jan and I were playing the other day. Might make this our little final conversation piece for today's podcast. Jan and I played a game of, do you know what top trumps are, Toby? It used to be a kids' game at school. You used to have like a load of cards and you pick a team over your mate's team. You've got half the cards. Jan and I put together our all-time Thomas Cup team, and you could pick players from any era. You could pick a Malaysian men's doubles pair from the 80s to play with an Indonesian from the 2010 period. It didn't really matter, but we put together a squad, and I took Jan on in this all-time Thomas Cup. And to be fair, half of it we came up with the same sort of players, nullified it. The rest of it came up to be about evens, and it was a bit of a draw. And the only thing we disagreed on, whether that disagreement is for the sake of conversation or a heartfelt agreement here, but men's singles was the big area where we've got a bit of a debate going on. And every time we get anybody on, we want to see what they think about it.
Yeah.
Basically, Jan's team, he picked Lindan for his men's singles, which most sane people would. However, I feel that a peak Kento Momota could be the only person to beat a peak Lindan. And you've played against, you've certainly played Momota.
I've never actually played Lindan, which I'm kind of hoping before he stops will change, but time's running out.
You must have been a huge Lindan fan being a lefty. I was saying to Jan earlier, I used to prefer to watch a right-handed player because I was trying to learn how to play badminton and I could try and copy the footwork and what have you. Did you have any of that going on when you were a kid and you were learning badminton? Did you sort of, you must have been a big Lindan fan yourself.
Yeah, there were two Chinese. One was Lindan and the other one was actually Bao Chunlai, if you remember him.
Yes.
Because he was actually a bit taller as well, and when I got to about 16, I had a massive growth spurt. So seeing, normally back then, it's not so much the case now, but back then a lot of the Asian players were a little bit smaller, whereas he was quite tall. So I could kind of see similar stroke patterns that I could understand and train a little bit more. But yeah, those two. Although I must say I am a massive Momota fan.
Okay, so the perspective, the sort of circumstances Jan and I put this in was that if you could imagine a one-off badminton event, you took all the players from history and put them in it for a massive prize fund. It was as big as the Olympics and the World Champs and all that put together, and you could pick anyone to represent you as a team. Jan had picked Lindan. If I'd have just picked Lindan for the sake of it, it's an obvious draw. Jan believes that there's nobody else in history that could beat Jan in that 2008 Olympic final where he destroyed Cheng Wei. I think on his day, Momota could do it. If it went to 3, it'd be close, but I think he could do it. What do you think, Toby, as an actual professional player who knows what they're talking about compared to me and Jan as just two badminton fans? What are your thoughts? Could Momota beat him?
I agree with Jan that maybe the best ever one-off performance I've seen is that 2008 Olympic final, because I struggle to think I've ever seen someone move consistently that fast for about 40 minutes. However, I look at Momota and I just think he's the sort of person and player who can counter anyone's style if he's at his best. But I think at the moment, until I can definitely be 100% sure on that, I'd have to go with Lindan. But I think down the line that could definitely change. It's a very difficult one.
It's an unfair question to put people that Momota's peak is a different era, really, than Lindan's peak. We're talking 10, 12 years ago. It's an unfair question, but we were discussing whether Momota, his style of play, my argument is his style of play and preventing Lindan from playing that attacking sort of smash follow-up kill relentlessly for 2, maybe 3 sets. And I just think he can do it. I think he can find Lindan's backhand, neutralise that. And he's got a chance with his shot quality and his consistency. And they've both got amazing defence. But, Jan's convinced Lindan's big attack is just too big for anybody.
I think the one reason I'm looking more towards Lindan is, at the moment, I look the one player who constantly, even though he hasn't beaten him that many times, the one player who can give Momota real troubles is Ginting. And Ginting's style of play is very, very fast and very, very attacking on the whole. He has other parts to his game. He has good defensive shots, and he can still rally. But that's his main assets, and that is similar to Lindan. But I think Lindan's tactical astuteness is better than someone like a Ginting. So that's why at the moment as well, on top of what I said before, is why I'd probably go for Lindan.
Yeah, and I've won the argument, mate. I can't. I mean, we've got an expert on the show, singles, an actual player, and he's saying Lindan. So I think I've got to concede it, mate. I think you've won it. I think you've won the Thomas Cup Top Trumps challenge. I'm gonna have to come back and take the cup or something. Or
I will collect my virtual $10 million later.
Yeah, I think you should.
But it is such a shame that Momota didn't come up, even 2 or 3 years earlier, because then, even though they would have been at slightly different peaks, we would have seen probably those matchups more competitively. I mean, my favourite match from the last couple of years is actually, I think it was Lee Chong-wei's last match when he played Momota at the Malaysian Open.
Yeah.
I think 2018, and that was frighteningly good level of badminton. So it is a shame that we're not seeing those guys mix it more often than they could have. But I guess it's the same in all sports. It's like boxing, Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali. Who would you choose, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting how in tennis we saw sort of the big 4 players, and then similarly in badminton around the same sort of time when you've got Gator and Tawfiq Hidiat with Chong-wei and Lindan. Those 4 legends of the sport playing men's singles. We don't have that right now. Momota is head and shoulders above the rest, I think it's fair to say, and the Indonesians are the only people that seem to really trouble him consistently, and yet he's still miles ahead in the rankings. And I think anyone's choice for the next Olympic champion as well. It's a shame that, like you say, Momota wasn't in that same era. That would have been fascinating.
Yeah, it is a shame, but the only positive spin on that is maybe that's the case in the men's singles. Although I still think that might change in another year or two. But if you look at the women's singles, the quality at the top now is unbelievable, and there are kind of, you could probably pick out 6 different women's singles players to win the Olympics. I don't think there's one that definitely stands out as ultimate favourite in the women's singles. And I think the standard of top women's singles now is really, really high. Really high.
Yeah, I'd have to totally agree with you on both of those points. I think on their day, you've got anybody from Sindhu. Marin could still do it because she loves a big event. Tai Su Ying, you've got, the Japanese. It's anybody's. Absolutely true.
Anybody.
Yes, I saw her with World Juniors, and I'm so pleased she's doing so well. She's so consistent.
If I had to put money on someone, it would be her. She's still so young.
Yes.
With another year, she could be dominating.
Yeah,
it's a great debate on that one, because then you haven't even mentioned people like Ratchanok, who I wouldn't necessarily say is a favourite to win it, but on a one-off match, she could beat any of those players.
Yes.
So there's He Bin Zhao, and there's those sort of wild cards who necessarily might not win the whole thing, but they can beat any of those other top ones who could. So that's I think that's the kind of, in terms of competitiveness at every tournament, I'd say women's singles is really leading the way at the moment in that respect, and it's quite refreshing to see that, because let's be honest, over the years it normally is always the men's events that get the most acknowledgement. So I think it's great to see in our sport that women's singles is the one that's maybe leading the way in kind of having to guess a winner.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's a really positive place for women's badminton to be in right now. It's good stuff. Jan, do you have much more for Toby? Because I'm just so happy that we were able to cover that with you, Toby, and I'm so appreciative for your input today. It's been brilliant, mate.
Yeah, no,
my pleasure.
I think we got to everything we wanted to talk about.
Well, that's great. And Toby, mate, I hope you've enjoyed it. And, if you're happy to, and if this goes anywhere, if we get a few people listening to this and, we'd love to have you back on, mate, because it's been so good to have, have your story and to talk about things that matter so much to you right now. And, just want to say thanks and want to say good luck. Hopefully there'll be some badminton, in the next few months and obviously over the next year or so for the Olympics. Just best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you very much. And fingers crossed for everyone. I hope you guys stay safe and everyone's okay. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing, because I think it's great to have as much discussion and content as we can around, especially elite badminton, but badminton in general. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you for the support. Yeah, we'll keep doing it. It's just, to be honest, it feels like I'm sitting in a pub having a chat with my mate talking about badminton, which you don't get to do. Jan and I don't actually do, because we're meant to be training, so we don't do that. But it's a good chance to try and replicate it in a kind of Peter Crouch podcast kind of way. So yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Cheers, Toby. Thanks very much.